The Racing Pod
on Off the Ball
with William Hill. Best odds guaranteed on all Irish and UK racing. 18 plus. See gamblingcare.ie.
Welcome to episode 24 of the Racing Pod on Off the Ball with John Duggan and Johnny Ward. Remember, we're here every week with analysis, race previews, tips, stories, interviews, and the crack. The first half of the pod each week is free to air. The second part exclusively for members. So be sure to sign up by going to offtheball.com/join. For members this week, we'll preview the Oaks Trial at Lingfield on Saturday, the Swinton Hurdle at Haydock on Saturday as well, and the 3 Group 3 races at Leopardstown on Sunday. So subscribe now for all the juicy info and for a lot of winners. We've had a great year in terms of tipping some winners. So Johnny, how are you getting on?
I'm very well, JD.
The Irish summer's arrived.
It's been amazing today. Just the form has put everyone in, 21, 22 degrees. Very strange that Goran was still racing on heavy ground this week, but the other race courses like Leopardstown, good ground. I was at Navan drying out to nearly good ground. Good conditions for flat horses, and great to see Chester as well, like proper, summer ground as we should want at this time of the year. And yeah, it's just been an amazing week on the racing front, really.
Few storylines to go through, Johnny. Jack Kennedy, first of all, I think we need to say huge congratulations to Jack. 123 winners to 121 for Paul Townend in the title race. First time he's ever been crowned champion jockey. He's had 5 broken legs. Unbelievable, really. Yeah,
he's only turned 25. He had his first ride on a horse called Tagliatelle in what I think was the Tipperary Cup, but it was a race, a flat race in Clonmel, or one of the Tipperary tracks where he was. I always remember when Tagliatelle went to post that day, he was a hot favourite, even though Jack Kennedy was riding him, and he'd never ridden before, and that's how much regard he was held in. Gordon Elliott snapped him up early, like kind of a football team going to like South America and finding Messi or Ronaldo and saying we're going to get him here as early as we can, bring him through the nursery system. And to be honest, I really did want him to win it because I think he's gone through so much. I was at Downpatrick on the Friday prior to Punchestown. He had 7 rides that night, and I think it's fair to say he was struggling to walk. Like, he was really badly injured, and he was actually in a kind of one of them. When your ankle is kind of not in a cast, but in a kind of a support later in the week in Punchestown. So he clearly was going through the pain barrier. But that day he won on his first horse of the 7 rides, and that was like an easy to back sort of 2-1 chance, I think. And he'd very good chances that day. And Paul Townend had 1 ride, so I was thinking Jack Kennedy's going to stretch like a bit clear here. He didn't have another winner. And then when Paul was going to ride Gallopin des Champs on the Wednesday at Punchestown, which seems a long, long time ago now, it looked really, really likely that he was going to win the title. But that long odds-on shot was beaten. Paul didn't have a winner then, I think, the following day. And if you look at Paul's rides and Jack not being available on the Saturday, it really looked like Paul would win it. But just some horses disappointed. Gaelic Warrior, Gallopin des Champs, you get long odds on both of them being beaten. He was brilliant on Cargese. And to be honest, I think Paul would be not only magnanimous, but I don't think it was the be-all and end-all from this season. He rode like the Gold Cup winner. He rode brilliant horses.
The Grand National winner,
rode the Grand National winner. Rode the Champion Hurdle winner. I think he was perfectly happy. I know if I were a jockey, riding in the good races would mean far more than winning the jockey's title. And Paul only really started to pick up outside rides in the last sort of few weeks. And I'm sure he'll be hungry for more next season, but he would have been very magnanimous with Jack. And I feel in general across the racing spectrum, if you weren't attached to Paul or Willie Mullins, most people would have wanted Jack to win, given the history of his injuries that you mentioned. And it was nice this season to see how good he is, good he is,
Well, great stars arrive, and he arrived at Cheltenham with Lebec, that mad horse.
Oh, God, yes.
At 17 years of age.
Jack Mellon, the same race. I remember, it's funny you think of these races, but Teahupoo this year was big for him as well. And I did say I think Teahupoo he has to win at Punchestown if Jack's to win the title. But he was very confident that day at Punchestown at Cheltenham after some near misses. The other thing, JD, is he was very, very close to being denied the title because of injury at the end. If he hadn't been able to ride after his fall at Bellewstown, he probably would have. He'd have really struggled. So I'm delighted for him. He's a great ambassador. I think he's going to enjoy a lot of time off now, actually.
Good.
And it's funny looking at it. There are two horses alone this weekend running where I'm like, that'll go for the Galway hurdle. I think that's going to run the Galway hurdle. And with the sun out this morning, I was just like thinking of summer racing. And there are two horses, one of or both of whom we'll mention. And Jack will hopefully be in thriving form.
Mention
for
them
Galway.
now. What are they?
Lark in the morning in the Swinton, obviously.
Right, okay.
I think we spoke a lot about him at the various previews for Cheltenham.
Yeah.
He is said to really want nicer ground than he got at Cheltenham. JJ Slevin rode him for the better ground at Cheltenham. But like he's owned by the Mulrynes, and I imagine he's one of 130 in the Swinton. The other horse is Ethical Diamond. They're actually both 4-year-olds, but you remember last year a 4-year-old won the race, Zarek the Brave, and at least Lark in the Morning has potential to be better than Zarek the Brave. So it's funny, like when I'm on the racing TV circuit in recent weeks, like once it gets into May, like Galway's kind of on my mind. And if a horse were to win at Ballinrobe or Downpatrick or a similar track or had Western connections, I'm very proud to be from Galway, and I'm proud that our festival is almost the pivot of the summer in terms of festivals and that. And Punchestown was a lot of fun. We weren't here last week, but we gotta mention we didn't party like we partied in 2023, but I certainly partied in your absence, and I have to say Punchestown as an experience is just fantastic. I
didn't go mad now, Punchestown.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the couple of days. I brought a barman who's from Brazil to an Irish race meeting for the first ever time. He'd never seen a horse race meeting, and I brought him up to the bookies. I said, "Put 10 each way on Harsh, will you?" in the first there, and I did back it myself. And then we went up to the back of the stands to watch it. His first ever race meeting, and the bloody thing won. And it was like a Disney movie.
But do you remember? Like I remember.
I was just so delighted for him,
Yeah,
he went up and then he collects the 130 quid or something. It's just such a great moment. So buzzed.
I remember, like, I don't know why Rocket Gibraltar came into my mind during the week, but I was still thinking of backing Rocket Gibraltar to win the Breeders' Cup when he literally won all around him, and I had £30, I suppose, £30 on Rocket Gibraltar to win the Breeders' Cup. A horse called, I think, Landseer broke down in front of him and he had to divert, and he was beaten by Dome Driver, I think, and it was like, Mick Cannan rode him, Alex Ferguson's called, couldn't believe it, and I was like, the £30 that I lost that day, I was like, oh my God, like this is a travesty. But I still remember like the 5 each way on horses at Cheltenham, and how I fell in love with Cheltenham 21 years ago, like 5 each way on, say, You'll Never Walk Alone or something like that. And maybe the Brazilian from a pub I think we both know well, maybe he'll get hooked as well.
Yeah, well, hopefully in the right way. Keeneland, actually, top of the Breeders' Cup. I'm wearing my Breeders' Cup.
Hooked on racing, you know what I mean? Yeah, because it's gambling's fine, but like I went to Punchestown. I think I was there 3 days. I had 2 bets.
Breeders' Cup hat with me actually today.
Yeah, lovely.
563 rides for Jack Kennedy. So he had more rides than any other jockey. So he went everywhere. You'd have to say only Darrell O'Keefe had more than 500 rides, and well done to Patrick Mullins as well. 57 winners, a strike rate of 41%. In Irish jumps racing this season. So
yeah, and I have to say he definitely has a future as a racing columnist as well. His articles have been brilliant. He's just written some lovely articles, and Patrick is probably going to take more and more of a role, I think, in the training as well as the years go on. And got to mention Jodie Townend as well. How important she's been in that operation, and Danny Gilligan, who won the conditional title. He won like how many of the top handicap chases did he win this year? He won. He certainly won the.
Was it the Galway Plate he won?
He won the Galway Plate. He won on Ashtree Meadow. He won the Troytown. He won 1 or 2 others as well. But he kind of came through. I suppose he announced himself in Galway because he's from a famous racing family. And the lovely thing as well is that Jack, his brother, has ridden the good horses from Paul and Natalie's yard. Natalie's the mother, and there are 2 other brothers who've ridden as well. But Jack, who's very, very modest, says like I'm not within an ass's roar to use that term of my brother ability wise, but he's gotten a great tune out of Buddy One, and I do wonder like that horse is to go novice chasing. He's a top class staying hurdler, and I do wonder could they run him in Galway as well. And mind is kind of half on Galway after the weeks we've had.
City of Troy, an inexplicable defeat in the 2000 Guineas at Newmarket. This horse was talked up so much by Aidan O'Brien last year. He flopped, beaten over 16 lengths by Notable Speech. Horses can't talk, right? I'd love to know what the hell happened because this was meant to be the second coming of Pegasus. Now, it happened last year where the Gus Rodan was 12th in the Guineas, but he then turned out and won the Epsom Derby. So maybe City of Troy will come back. It did happen with One Cool Cat 20 years ago. The One Cool Cat was meant to be this big thing and flopped in the Guineas. So it can happen, but just a baffling situation.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up the horse here now, so I should have Should have done a bit more prep, but it was in 1974, so it was 50 years ago. I think I might have it here. And it was a horse that was trained by Vincent O'Brien. And Alan Sweetman, I may not be able to look up his name here, but he was basically 50 years ago.
I read that article, yeah.
Yeah, and there were a couple of references to him. I think I said this during the week as well. Bruff Scott did an article in the Times on Sunday about the Derby, and like it was 80, 85, maybe 90% about City of Troy, whereas the winner was very, very good. And I'm like, City of Troy ran 3 times as a 2-year-old. That's fine. You're in the senior ranks now, and you have to
senior
step
hurling.
You're senior hurling now, and he ran like a fella who'd been basically partying more so than hurling over the winter. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing there. But the 1974. And I'm kind of funny with history, like a kind of forgotten stories I'm interested in. The 1974 Derby flop that Vincent trained, Alan Sweetman made the point that in his autobiography, or in the biography that his wife wrote in conjunction with the writer whose name I forget. Ivor Herbert. There was no mention of him. Like he didn't exist. There was like, he was literally, I'm not sure he was referenced once in the book. So I'd love to track the story of what happened in
Appalachie.
What happened to Appalachie in 1974. And we've had One Cool Cat. We've had the Warfront horse that was the big talking horse of Aiden's, was beaten at odds on a few years ago as well. Now, it turned out that a lot of Warfront horses for Aiden clearly didn't train on. And that was a small concern for me going into this year. Like, has this horse trained on? He wasn't the biggest 2-year-old. But it was just a lifeless run. Like, it was just like a horse that was kind of out of his depth.
Yeah,
you know,
he has saddled 10 winners.
Air Force Blue was the disappointing.
10 winners of the Guineas he saddled Aidan O'Brien. None of them had a prep run beforehand. I just wonder, do we need to talk up the horses as much? Maybe just let the horses do the talking. Now, I know Aidan was excited about the horse, and it has to be huge excitement, but it's just. Well,
what I would say is that one of the owners said that he's our Frankel, and like that's not something that Aidan said, to be fair. Aidan kind of was talking him up. He said he was the best 2-year-old we've had. But I suppose when was it Michael Tabor said that, I suppose that was putting it into the bracket of, okay, we got to believe the hype here. That stuff does go well in the sales manuals or whatever. It goes well in the Irish Field or the Racing Post. He's our Frankel, and you put an ad for City of Troy. But ultimately the horse, like, in fairness to people at the sales, like most Derby winners flop at stud or disappoint at stud or don't do much at stud. Most horses are failed stallions when they go to stud. So even if he did win the Guineas, there'd still be a question mark. Is this horse going to be?
Yeah. Like Rocket Gibraltar wasn't a good.
Rocket Gibraltar was a solid stallion, but he wasn't as good nearly as his performances. Galileo was a stallion who started quite disappointingly, but like even Frankel wasn't certainty to be good.
See the stars.
See the stars. So there were like there'd be question marks, but now it's like I'm like Auguste Rodin last year. I was kind of happy to write that off because physically he was all about being a 3-year-old. I'm not so happy with this guy. Like I wouldn't be at all surprised if he didn't win again.
Okay, so look, hopefully Aidan and Ryan Moore will have a better day going forward with City of Troy. Kentucky Derby, I was watching that late on Saturday, won by Mystic Dan. Brian Hernandez Jr. with a really enterprising ride on the 18-1 shot. He also won the Oaks, Brian Hernandez, on Torpedo, and a 150th running of the race, really won by a nose. Would you have any interest in the Kentucky Derby as a race that appeals to you?
The Kentucky Derby is decadent and depraved. I remember reading that in college. Hunter S. Thompson. Like, I mean, what do they call that? Gonzo journalism, where you inserted yourself in the story, which, like, if ever journalism were to appeal to me or would suit me, it would be that, like, story of basically inserting yourself in the story, like, you know, the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that type where you just go for the ride, like, and see what happens. It's completely mad, and it's all the people you meet, like, and it's amazing stuff. So absolutely, let's go to the Kentucky Derby, JD. You know, we need somebody.
We'll get out the red roses, Johnny. Get out the red roses.
Get out the red rose. We need somebody to pay for it. But yeah, I absolutely would. What a race it was as well. Like, it had everything. Yeah, Hidden Love, a very sad story there. Chester during the week won the Chester Vaz and suffered a freak injury after the race, had to be put down sadly, and that's rare on the flat. Very sad for Connections. Yeah, I couldn't believe that because saw it live. I was just sickening. I've said this before. Like, Aidan had Aidan O'Brien had given me a little bit of word for agenda earlier in the year, and I loved his performance at Dundalk. And it wasn't that Aidan's 3-year-olds in general have necessarily thrived so far this season. Loved his performance, and was sort of saying to my missus at the time, we were in France, and I was like, this could pay for, something or other, pay for some of the holiday. I said, this horse
Pay for some pan au chocolat.
pan au chocolat, like, and this could pay for, other stuff down the road or whatever, God willing. But I was like, if this horse could win the Irish Derby, this horse could win the Irish Derby. And he didn't like damage his claim so much at Chester. But I was like, this horse in front, like, this is a hell of a performance, really good performance. And then I go to the racing post an hour later. I was like, I really felt crestfallen. I was like, Jesus, that's harsh. And in fairness, I liked the way the race was. They did an interview with John Gosling, who just had another runner race, where he tried to explain that a horse is just, it's not like patching up a human being here. Like, you can't put a horse like in a wheelchair, for example. You can't like patch up a horse who's broken his leg that readily. It just doesn't work. And it was really in equine terms, that was tragic, because for me, he was like the most likely Derby winner of that performance.
You ever had a Lescargo?
Have I had a Lescargo? I had them in France. Yeah, I had them in Antibes in the street. And I think the guy was looking at me. He knew I wasn't French. They need dressing. They're pretty bland on their own, but yeah, no issue with them. Yeah, I don't think they'll.
I don't know how you could do that. Anyway.
Yeah, don't think they'll get going over here though.
No, don't think so. Lingfield on Saturday, the Derby trial.
Gone through a lot, JD. Yeah.
3 o'clock, 1 mile, 3.5 furlongs. I like Illinois in this, I have to say. Third in the Ballysacks on heavy ground at Leopardstown. Added Galileo. Think he'll improve. Think he'll like the better ground. They had a nice winner, Aidan and Ryan, during the week at Chester. I think this is the one to beat. Do you agree?
Yeah, so the last day he ran would have been on entirely different ground, obviously. And that day when there was a 50-1 winner, Dallas Star, I thought he was a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, the ground was so bad at Leopardstown. We're going back to 34 days ago. It was like pretty much bottomless National Hunt ground. And in the same race, the Euphrates finished ahead of him. But like that, I remember talking to Dylan Brown McMonigal, wrote him that day, and he was like, this horse, like I think it was Dylan was saying, or maybe it was Aidan, but he'll stay well. He was flat out the whole way, but he managed to finish second. I'd be surprised if Illinois isn't a better horse than him, a classier horse. So I'd go with him, JD, but he is short enough. And a horse I want to give a mention to is Salamanca. You mentioned the great See the Stars, who I'll never entirely know who the best horse I saw was, See the Stars or Frankel. What would you say?
I'll See the Stars.
Over Frankel?
Yes, because I think, and Johnny Mercer said it, I think you have to, for me, you have to be able to do it over different distances. And that See the Stars could win a Guineas and a Derby and an Arc.
Frankel wasn't tried over a mile and a half, though.
No, I just, yeah, and we'll never know whether he would have stayed, but like Frankel was lightning. But I just feel to See the Stars. I like variety when it comes to analysing great winners. It's like Caught a Star, I would never say was a great racehorse. And that's a very controversial thing in ways to say, because I don't think he was a natural jumper. And I think it's steeplechasing is all about jumping.
I actually couldn't disagree more with you. Caught a Star to win a champion chase in a Gold Cup, in particular,
didn't win a champion chase.
Or to be as good as 2 miles as he was and win a Gold Cup. Like, he barely stayed the Gold Cup trip. He was brilliant at 2 miles. I think that's very harsh. Like, I'd have him ahead of Denman, because Denman was a bit of a one-trick
very,
pony.
very good. I'm talking about the greatest racehorses. Like, you're talking about Arkle here or Best Mate. I wouldn't put Caught a Star in that bracket, I have to say, personally.
On the Frankel See the Stars thing, the funny thing was Frankel was very difficult, and like Henry Cecil would say that, like, his Guineas forms, he went way too hard, and See the Stars in the Arc was pulling Michael Cannan's hands for maybe half a mile, 6 furlongs. So they're not really traits you want in a stallion, but they just had the ability to get through. For me, Frankel just had that. Like, I was at York when he won. Like, he beat St Nicholas Abbey by like 10 lengths. It was just like, this is insane. Like, he was ridiculously good. So I'd probably, but Michael Cannan would say definitely See the Stars. Euphrates is by Frankel. Illinois is by Galileo. I'd go with Illinois, but the See the Stars horse Salamanca goes in as a maiden. He's very interesting at 25-1.
Okay, the other race we're going to look at in the free tire selection is the Janero Stakes at Naas. We have Henry de Bromhead actually having a horse here in the flat. Higher Leaves, Flight of Fancy, Jesus, Madame Celeste, and See the Boss.
Well, Henry and Gavin Cromwell as well. Gavin Cromwell has a horse, 2 horses, homebreds, running in the Bective stud colours this weekend. One of them by No Nay Never. So that's quite interesting. And I think Gavin might have 40% flat horses for the season ahead. Henry has dabbled in a few flat horses, has some nice ones. Only 5 going to post here. Madame Celeste, obviously, she's a Galileo. She was impressive on debut. I am going to go with Flight of Fancy under Wayne Lorden. I think this horse is definitely interesting. One of 2 Galileos in the race. Goes in as a maiden, but out of Inca Princess, beautiful pedigree. Was behind Galileo Dane the last day, but was well fancied, atrocious ground, and this should suit a lot better. I have to say, I'm really enjoying the flat action in Ireland at the moment. Like I was in Navan, JD, and there's a nice spread of sort of trainers winning, and like it's just there's something about like if you haven't really gone racing, I'd strongly advise going to see a flat meeting on a summer's evening and seeing the 2-year-olds and seeing the 3-year-olds, these beautifully bred horses, and how beautiful they look in the ring and how they behave and how they take to the whole thing, and the caliber of riders we have. Ryan Moore was there the other day in Navan. Didn't have a winner actually, and the flat is in Ireland at the moment is just. I know you could say some of our top horses relative to Britain aren't there anymore, but I'm really enjoying it.
McMahon Double J. I'm going to go with Illinois in the 3 o'clock at Lingfield on Saturday at 5-2. Have you got one from that race or another race for the McMahon Double J?
I will go with. I'm actually going to go with the Swinton in this for this part of the show. So I'm going to go with Lark in the Morning as my nap. And I'll give an Irish selection in the second half of the show, which I really fancy as well.
Lark in the Morning for John. What price is Lark in the Morning?
5-2, but like he mightn't seem great, but he's thrown in as far as I'm concerned.
This is the Swinton.
My only worry is he's a 4-year-old taking on older horses, but he's a national hunt horse. Bred horse wouldn't bother me too much.
3:15 on Saturday. Lark in the Morning. Johnny's McMahon Double J selection along with mine, which is Illinois. This is the Racing Pod on Off the Ball. If you're listening to the free version of the podcast, we're leaving you here. But if you're looking for more, including our analysis of that Swinton Hurdle in depth at Haydock on Saturday, the Oaks Trial at Lingfield also on Saturday, and the 3 Group 3 races at Leopardstown on Sunday, go to offtheball.com/join to subscribe and get the full podcast every Friday with all of our racing tips, insights, and stories from the week's action.